Hi, I'm Sia.
And I'm Sana, and this is the Unfiltered World podcast. Today we have a
I'm
special
Sia.
guest with us. Could you please state your name and your occupation?
Hi, I am Heather Thompson. I am the executive director of the nonprofit Table to Table.
Thank you so much for being here with us today. We're so excited to interview you and learn more about your experience and some of the things that go on at Table to Table.
Yeah,
Um, One of our first questions, we're just going to get right in. We wanted to know, where does the name Table to Table come from? Like, what's the meaning behind it?
sure. Well, first, thanks so much for having me. I'm really passionate about the work that we do, and it means so much when anyone from the community and especially students, get excited about what we do and want to get involved and be part of it. So, Table to Table was formed in 1999. So we're a 25-year-old nonprofit organization at this point. So I wasn't there at the beginning. I just joined the organization this year. But the wonderful thing is that some of our founder is still very involved. Some of the people who were involved early on as volunteers are still with our organization as volunteers and as board members. So we have that rich history that's still a part of our organization as we continue to move forward. Table to Table, from what I understand, the idea of the name really came from this idea that everybody can be a part of our mission. And because we're a food rescue, we are focused on, keeping good food out of landfills and making sure that it reaches the tables of our neighbors who need it most. Our founder went to culinary school, and that was part of what sparked her idea and the inspiration for Table to Table is, she'd be in this classroom with her fellow culinary students, cooking and preparing these wonderful dishes, and then they'd, take a couple of bites of samples, and then the rest would go in the garbage. And so in her mind, she'd also done a lot of volunteer work in the community. And it was sort of like this beautiful food belongs on somebody's table. So that was a big part of the inspiration for the name and for the whole concept of the organization.
That's beautiful. I love the meaning behind it.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
So our next question is, we're just going to dive straight into it. How have both eviction and rent price increases been like significant factors leading to homelessness? And what other factors
Mm.
do you believe should be considered?
The whole issue of homelessness, of poverty, of financial struggle in the state of New Jersey and our communities is pretty complex. And, you know, I want to, mention that Table to Table serves and provides food to a lot of organizations that do support our neighbors who are experiencing homelessness, but also all sorts of other people because financial struggle has a lot of faces in a state like New Jersey. And it can be people who are currently without a home, who are living on the street or, couch surfing with relatives or who are staying in a motel. Or it can be families who, have housing but are really struggling to make ends meet and understanding that journey that can sort of take from someone from that point of not quite making ends meet to actually becoming homeless. Um, it can happen gradually, it can happen over time. And it's everything from wages not, being increased as quickly as the cost of living, right? Like you mentioned, rent increases, and they've been pretty significant in the last couple of years. I will actually say a personal friend of mine who her husband is full-time employed, she's part-time employed, they have three kids, they rent a house in a different part of the state, and she just told me yesterday that her rent just went up by 5%, and she's really worried. She's not sure what they're going to do because they're just making enough money now to cover all their expenses. So it's a lot of things sort of all piling on top of each other. And, families and people who are in that situation they'll try to make tough choices and they'll look at every dollar that's coming in and figure out, they'll pick and choose. So one of the areas where we know that we can help is one of the first things that families will sacrifice is healthy food, because healthy food is more expensive at the grocery store. So being able to provide that can provide a little bit of relief and allow families to direct their finances elsewhere, but it can still cascade, right? So then it becomes, okay, well, I don't have to spend as much on groceries this month, but I've still got my utility bills, my internet bills, because you kind of can't live in today's world without internet. um, my rent, things that my kids need, and healthcare costs, prescription costs. It just adds up. And New Jersey's an expensive state. Um, and then, there are benefits that people can access depending on where they are, how much they're making, but those levels for who can access benefits are set at the federal level, not at the state level. So the amount that someone needs to the top amount that someone can make to qualify for certain benefits is the same here as it is in the middle of the country where cost of living is much lower. So it just doesn't calibrate.
Yeah, and I think
Yeah, I
like
definitely
very,
agree.
oh,
Sorry, there's lots of like different factors that, go into like your finances. You have to like kind of consider everything, all aspects of it. So it's definitely important. And I agree. I mean, in most cases, people do sort of sacrifice like the food part. That's like the first thing to go,
Mhm.
which is really sad.
Yeah. Yeah, because it's a basic need and it's also, beyond just calories to fill your belly. Like everybody deserves to be able to eat well and eat healthy and have choices and feed their kids things that they're actually proud to feed them. But too many of our neighbors don't have those choices.
and I think it's like important to note that even the smallest increases in price or just like rent, for example, like make a huge difference in somebody's life.
Yeah, yeah. 5% sounds like a reasonable amount, but that extra, $150, $200 a month for somebody that was counting on that money for something else to pay their electric bill or their internet bill or to send their kids on the school field trip with all the other students or whatever it is. It's like, okay, now what? Now how do I cover that cost and keep my family in our home?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Very important things to consider. With that, we'll move on to our next sort of like group of questions. So this is just asking more about tables, volunteers.
Sure.
So first question is approximately how effective are your volunteers, or how necessary and how big of a role do they play at Table to Table?
Volunteers are actually completely critical to our ability to do our food rescue work. Oh my goodness, so sorry. That is my dog.
That's okay.
Uh, if you he's gonna take a minute to calm down. I apologize.
That's all right. Don't worry.
Okay,
Happens all the
that's
time.
good.
Hopefully you're planning to edit this later.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
It's okay, we'll add that part, yeah.
Beckett. All right, good boy. So volunteers are very, very critical to the work that we do. We actually would not be able to achieve everything we're achieving without our volunteers. So I know we'll talk a little bit more about sort of a day in the life of Table to Table in a few minutes, but the food rescue operation that we run can basically be split into two parts. There's our fleet of trucks that are out every day doing larger rescues. But then we're relying on volunteers to do smaller rescues, micro rescues, sort of. So in a lot of cases, we'll have food donors like a local deli or a local restaurant or a smaller community grocery store or a farmer's market or a school that they want to donate their surplus food, but it's not in large enough volume to warrant sending a 24-foot refrigerated box truck to pick it up. It might be 20 trays of food, or it might be 8 or 10 boxes of excess, produce and eggs and milk from a local grocer, or the prepared, sandwiches and salads from a local deli. And so since 2021, when we launched our Table to Table iRescue app, we've been able to have volunteers, anybody basically who has a car and a smartphone and they can download the app can sign up as a volunteer and go on and claim these rescues. It essentially works like Uber Eats, but for food donations. And that has been significant not only in adding to the amount of food we can rescue. Like this year alone, in 2024 already, just our volunteers have rescued over 1.5 million pounds of food and delivered it to nearby agencies, pantries, community kitchens, homeless shelters, places like that. But it's allowed us to work with those smaller food donors that we would have had to say no to in earlier years. And it's allowed us to bring food to smaller partners like a shelter that has 8 families or a small pantry that's operating out of, the basement of a church or a temple that they don't want us to deliver a pallet of food to them. They don't have space for it. They don't have enough people to give it to. But these 8 or 10 boxes or these 20 trays of prepared food it means the world to them.
Yeah, I mean, I think that a lot of people just don't realize how important it is to help as a community. And people are like, oh, well, these are really pressing issues, but how can I help? How can I help out? Like, even the smallest bit of volunteering can make a huge difference.
It really can. And what I love about the way our volunteers work with us is it's very concrete. Like if you take a minute to think about it, everybody can think of places where they know good food is getting thrown away, right? And then everybody at some point in their life has probably been a part of, a food drive, a canned goods drive, volunteering at a pantry, maybe accessing a pantry. So the understanding of, where food is needed also is there. And it's really just connecting the dots, realizing that if, I can work into my weekend errands to go on the app, see what's there, go to my, local grocer, pick up those 10 boxes of food and drive them a couple of miles to that pantry, that's accomplishing a lot. It's keeping the food out of the garbage. It's getting it to the organization that needs it. And we're doing all the back end work of matching where the food is coming from and where it's going because we're working with our partners to know, well, when do you distribute the food? What kind of food do you need? How much do you need? So that we're making sure that we get it to them at the right time and that we're getting the right food to these places. So like I mentioned, the prepared foods, which are when we have a restaurant that's hosting an event and they have food that wasn't served that's left over, and we can bring that food to a local shelter, and then all they have to do is reheat it and they can serve dinner to their residents. Again, huge burden off of that shelter. They're saving money, they're saving time, they're saving stress, and they're able to provide really good food to the people living there.
Yeah, the restaurant thing is something me and Sana actually talk about a lot because
Yeah.
I mean, we go to restaurants, we see so much food being wasted. It's just like so heartbreaking. Like this could be helpful to so many other people that really need it, and this is just going straight into like the trash can.
We've
So
definitely
Right.
brainstormed some solutions to it as well. I mean, if only people just understood how much it can make a difference.
Yeah. Well, we're here to help with that brainstorming and turn it into action.
Yeah.
Um, we have a lot of students who are taking action on it, and it's a wonderful thing. So yeah, we should work together on it.
Speaking of people actually taking action, have you marketed your organization in any way to attract and bring in more volunteers?
We have, and we're always looking for new ways to do that, new audiences to reach, new ways to connect with, specific people who might be able to be involved. So our volunteers, the people who are able to take the time to use the app and go out and do the food rescues, we know we've got a fair amount of older high school students who have their driver's licenses and are interested in this as a social problem and a solution to the problem and are building up, volunteer hours for their college applications. So we want to get better at how we connect with high school students to say, hey, you can be a part of our mission. We have a fair amount of people who are recently retired, and so they've got time on their hands. and they're active and able to, play an important role in the community. So we're trying to get more creative and thoughtful with reaching specific groups and specific demographics, because now that we've been doing this and engaging volunteers in this way for a few years, we're really starting to have an understanding of who our volunteers are and who has the time and capacity to do this. So let's get more folks like that involved. We have several hundred volunteers doing rescues with us, at least every once in a while, and some of them many times a week. But for as many volunteers as we have, there are always more food donors coming on board. There's always going to be places that need the food, so we need to keep growing our volunteer base.
Yeah, I think that's really important, to understand like where can you kind of bring in the efficiency and sort of recognize like, okay, we should market to these kinds of people, we should get their attention. Yeah, I think it's really important to do that. Um, that sort of kind of answered our next question actually. So we can sort of go into the next topic, talking about the iRescue app. So, how has your Table to Table iRescue app impacted your organization and has it been effective?
It really has, like I said before, the amount of food it's, allowed us to sort of add and rescue that, I wouldn't be surprised if we come close to 2 million pounds just this year by the end of the year. That's on top of, more than 20 million pounds being picked up by our trucks. Of course, they're doing, the majority of it in terms of weight, because they're picking up these, huge multiple pallets of food. But the amount is pretty incredible that just our volunteers are rescuing using the app, and the ability to reach deeper into communities where there is a lot of need, and it might be in smaller groups, smaller populations, but the need is still there. So being able to provide food to those types of organizations and to be able to say yes to any food donor. I think the beauty of the iRescue app is that anybody who wants to get involved can do so in some way. If you have a car and a driver's license and even a little bit of time, even if you can do it once a month, you can go on the app, you can claim the rescues that work for you, and you can go ahead and take care of them. And it's that simple. You don't have to do it every week or every day. Just do it when you've got time. If you're, not able to drive, or it's not something that you can commit to, or there's not rescues that currently fit your schedule, you can go talk to your local restaurant or your local grocer and say, hey, can I ask what it is you do with your extra food? Would you consider donating it? This organization makes it really easy. Here's some basic information. You should be donating your food to them. So we have more and more volunteers who are kind of becoming ambassadors for us in the community, getting food donors to sign onto the app so that we can start to pick up that food too. So it's been a wonderful tool for a lot of reasons, and it's something we just are really excited to continue expanding.
That's honestly amazing. I mean, I think it's such a great idea. And we wanted to ask more about your Fresh Produce Market Network. So could you tell us more about that as well and how it works and how it kind of came to fruition?
Yeah. So we have done this with a few different partners. And this is the fresh produce markets. They were basically launched because even though we have such a wonderful network of organizations that we deliver food to, these food pantries, these shelters, there are still a lot of communities that have a hard time accessing food distributions. Sometimes it's a matter of the distance, how far away one might be. Sometimes it's a matter of time. You might have a place that does food distribution on Tuesdays at 11 a.m. But if you work on Tuesdays at 11 a.m. and you can't get to that food distribution, okay, so you've missed it. So, or you have to make the choice between taking the morning off of work or, and getting food or missing the food. So we are always looking for more ways that we can get food out to the community in a way that's convenient for people, in a way that makes it really easy to access, and that gives people the dignity of choice, right? Sometimes with some of the food distribution models, as wonderful as they are, it's sort of like you get handed a bag of whatever they've got, and that's what you're taking home. And if you get home and look at that and say, okay, well, half the things in this bag are things that I don't like, or my kids don't like, or I don't know how to cook. So having that fresh produce market model, which we have done in Newark and some other places, and it goes to different locations. Like the one in Newark is in a different location every week. So we're reaching different communities and we're inviting them in to actually have some say over what it is they'd like to eat.
Yeah, I think like a recurring theme that we have in our podcast is always talking about how this food is being delivered to the people, how it's making them like feel, and if they're feeling, respected and dignified. I think we've talked about or we've mentioned it in all the episodes so far.
Yeah.
Definitely
Um,
was
and
the
it's
biggest
honestly like
thing.
it's a really important factor.
Yeah, it really is. I
Yeah.
mean, if somebody's struggling financially, to then all of a sudden feel like all of their choices are taken away, all of their agency, their dignity sort of gets stripped away. I mean, how awful and unfair is that? It's a horrible situation, and people are already. Look, I've met and been friends with and spoken with plenty of people who are in these exact situations over my nonprofit career, and it's hard enough. Like if you're a parent and you're having a hard time providing for your children, that is already a huge blow to your sort of sense of self-worth. And the last thing someone in that situation needs is to have that further chipped away by sort of saying, well, now you just take what you get and, deal with it. That's all you get because you got yourself in this situation. We're not going to get anywhere with anybody. We're not going to help anybody if we come at it with that approach. And to defend the partners that do those, the food distributions, they're still doing it out of, the greatest love and with a great amount of dignity. Sometimes it's just there are so many people showing up for these food distributions that there isn't going to be time for everyone to sort of pick and choose what they want because there are hundreds and hundreds of people. So I think the key really is having different models, and then people can access what they need in multiple ways and access what they want in multiple ways.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with all of that. I think it's time to move on to our next topic, which is process and experiences. So for this first question, we wanted to ask, what companies do you rely on in order to obtain the food you donate to homeless shelters, and have they been involved since the organization started in 1999?
We have food donors who have been involved with us since day one, and we're adding new food donors all the time. We work with a lot of supermarkets and grocery stores, the Insera ShopRites, which are all, through Bergen County and a big stretch of northern New Jersey, Whole Foods, Trader Joe's, Wegmans, Acme. These are all really loyal supermarket chain partners of ours. And with many of them, we do, regular weekly or multiple times a week pickups. And it's everything from produce and meat and dairy and fresh baked bread to grocery products. It's a really nice variety of food. We work with meal kit companies. HelloFresh in Newark is one of our big food donors, and even Universal Yums. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of them, but they're a really cool meal kit company that sources snacks from different countries all over the world. And they're here in New Jersey and they donate their surplus to us. So that's really fun. It's different, and it's interesting ethnic foods that a lot of our communities really appreciate. Because for some people, it's like, hey, this is a taste of home. We work with, Indian grocers, Thai grocers, to try to, again, source those kinds of food that we know that our diverse communities will really value and appreciate. Um, we work with a lot of restaurants. We work with big distributors like Driscoll's and Tropicana. So we'll go to their source before it even reaches the supermarkets. Anything they've got left that they don't think is going to sell, it's getting too close to its expiration date. It's still good, but it's getting close. We'll go pick that up and get it right out to the community. Um, and then we work with schools, we work with hospitals in their cafeterias to rescue the surplus food. We work with corporate cafeterias. We work with catering halls. We'll even go out to a lot of like food festivals where there are, maybe a dozen or 15 chefs who are set up and they're, serving little tastes of their food. We'll go out and make the rounds towards the end and tell the chefs anything you've got left over that hasn't been put out and touched by anybody, pack it into the tins, and we'll take it to a nearby shelter.
So, our next question is, what are some day-to-day activities necessary to ensure that table to table runs smoothly?
Constant communication between our drivers who are out with the trucks and our head of operations, Julie, our head of logistics, who is sort of takes the lead over our drivers. So it's a constant stream of communication and coordination between all of them. The fun and challenge of food rescue is that a lot of times we don't know what what we're getting until we get there and pick it up. So we might, show up at a food donor and end up with, 15 pallets of lemons. Or in one case, like I think we got like 800 wheels, giant wheels of brie. So, that in the moment decision of, okay, who wants 800 wheels of brie? And making the decision of how to split that up and who to deliver it to, knowing that the time is short, and the time is precious because it's fresh and we want it to stay fresh. Our trucks are refrigerated and we have a warehouse that has refrigeration and frozen storage if we need it, but we try to get everything out the same day that we got it, so that it stays fresh and gets into the hands of the community as quickly as possible. So that takes a lot of juggling, a lot of communication, a lot of sort of on the spot decision making, knowing our partners really, really well, who's open, who's doing a distribution later today or first thing tomorrow, who's got the refrigeration on site where they'll be able to store this in the fridge overnight. It's that knowledge and understanding of our network, which is really, really critical. And then on the app side, we have our wonderful app manager, Corinne, who is monitoring every rescue all the time, making sure that the food is getting picked up and dropped off on time, making sure the volunteers haven't run into any issues. She'll get alerts if something seems to be taking longer than it should, so she can reach out to the volunteer and say, hey, is everything okay? Because again, we're working with fresh food and it needs to stay fresh in order for us to really be fulfilling our mission. So it's that, that travel time and knowing that we're getting it to the right places quickly that's what we're all about on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, I think definitely like me and Sia have firsthand seen how much communication is important in a team. And also
Yeah.
just like with this topic in general, I think it's so important that people are like well aware of what they're advocating for and they're actually passionate about it because that makes it all the more impactful.
Continuing with the same topic, we have one last question, sort of pertaining to your personal experiences. So, are there any personal experiences or memorable interactions you can share with us involving the people receiving the food?
Yeah, I mean, so many. And I've been doing this work for a long time, in different ways, and just getting to know the people who are on the receiving ends of these services and really recognizing that they are people who happen to be in whatever situation they're in, who it's very, very hard for people to get to the point where they feel comfortable asking for or accepting help because everybody wants to be able to take care of themselves and provide for their families. And what I just always appreciate is the gratitude and the humanity of it all. So just a few weeks ago, an And this is like, to me, what food rescue is all about. I was at one of our partners with a group of volunteers, and we had had a truck delivery that morning. So we had these big boxes and pallets and bins of food that we were sort of going through and looking at, what we had that day and what we were going to be able to offer they serve several hundred families at this one food distribution every Tuesday in Englewood. And we had gotten a big donation of eggplants from a farm that we do some work with. And some of the eggplants on the top of the giant bins were bad. They were bruised and they had rotten spots. And so initially one of the people said, we're going to have to toss this bin. These aren't good. And I said, no, wait, let's take a look through them. I bet there's a lot of good ones in here. We just have to get the bad ones out. This is what food rescue is all about. And so, myself and some of the other volunteers kind of put on our gloves and rolled up our sleeves and started pulling out the bad eggplants, found like hundreds of good, beautiful eggplants in there. And so then when folks arrived to receive the food, the sort of typical, they're pulling up in their cars and we're sort of loading their cars for them. And we had some meat that had been donated as well, turkey, ham, some other meats. And so everybody was offered, would you like some meat? And in some cases, people would say, no, I'm good. And I'd say, oh, we also have eggplants today. And they'd say, oh my gosh, how many eggplants can I have? I'm a vegetarian, or like my husband's a vegetarian, and this is amazing. So just again, being able to offer choice and not just say take it or leave it. And then having done the work of sorting through the food and instead of trashing the whole bin, pulling out all the good ones and then being able to offer those to people and having them be so genuinely excited and tell me that, oh, this is what I'm going to make tonight with this eggplant. It was everything that food rescue is all about in that one experience.
Yeah, I think that's generally so sweet to be able to see people like firsthand appreciate, like what you're doing for them and what they're receiving. And them just being able to understand that, okay, yeah, people are, like helping me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, I think it's one of the most important things about this whole thing.
Yeah.
I
Um,
think it's more important that they just feel respected and
Yeah.
they feel like, wow, somebody really cares and is really willing to help.
Yeah. I also met a family not too long ago at one of our other partners who they come to pick up some groceries a couple times a week, but also there's prepared foods at that particular place. So they're able to, pack up prepared meals. And the mom is currently unemployed. She lost her job. She's trying to find a new job placement, but she's got two kids. So she brings home meals for herself and her kids, but also for several of her neighbors who can't get out. And so it's, somebody who's, yes, receiving, but also going the extra mile to give. I think we see so much of that in this line of work that it's not just you're on this side or you're on this side. It's really about community supporting community, and anybody can be on either side of that at any time.
I think, yeah, I think we love hearing about, other people's experiences with just, what they go through and what their interactions are like with, people receiving the food. Because it's not something that we get to hear from everyone a
Yeah.
lot, just, privacy reasons and just like, I think when you're, sort of at the head of something, when you're running something, you're not usually involved with actually carrying out the food.
Mm.
So I think, yeah, we just wanted to know more about what it's like to actually interact with these people and yeah.
Yeah, I find it not only really important to stay grounded in what I do, but just it's how I continue to find meaning in it. I it's important to me to take the time to go out and connect with people and form real relationships and, make sure everybody knows that it's all real people on the other end of this and that again, we're just all trying to help each other out as best we can.
Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
exactly.
Speaking of help, So could you tell us about how people, like students like us, or just people in general in our community, can get involved through the different events that Table to Table has to offer?
Yeah, of course. So certainly, we talked about volunteering through the iRescue app, and it really is a huge help. And as soon as somebody does it one time and realizes that it's simple, that this is real food, they look at that food and say, this would have ended up in the garbage. And instead, it's getting into the hands of people who need it. And then it becomes something that you want to be able to do again whenever you've got time. So volunteering through the app to do those food rescues, those food transport is a huge help. With students in particular, getting involved with advocacy at your own schools is huge. So we have our iRescue lunch program, which really it engages schools to rescue the food from your own cafeterias. There's a lot of food waste in cafeterias. And we have student teams who have gone to their administration and gone to their food service providers at their schools and said, hey, we want to stop wasting and throwing away this food. We want to get this packed up and donated through Table to Table, and organizing an actual group of student volunteers who will, go to the cafeteria maybe for half an hour at the end of the day, twice a week, pack up the food. We provide tins, even if the schools need them, we'll provide the aluminum trays to pack up the food. And then we'll send out a volunteer to pick it up and take it to that local shelter, that local group home, wherever it is. And it's so exciting when we have students do that for so many reasons. It's more food going into the community, it's less food being wasted, but it's also younger people connecting the dots between this enormous amount of food getting thrown away while there are people right in our own communities who need it. And what a silly problem it is, what a silly thing it is to throw away the food when we know folks need it. So let's just bridge the gap. And that's what Table to Table is all about. And so doing that right within your own schools is huge opportunity to learn and advocate and do something meaningful and concrete and real, and that has immediate impact, because the food that would get thrown away today is going to feed somebody tonight.
So I think we're on our last question now, for community involvement. So as we approach the holiday season, does food waste generally tend to increase around the holidays, and what are some ways we can prevent this?
It definitely does. And again, it happens at a lot of levels. Supermarkets, they're right now they're selling all their Thanksgiving wares, right? The turkeys and the yams and the potatoes and all the things that people buy to make their Thanksgiving feasts. And then the day after Thanksgiving, some of that stuff will go on sale. And then the weekend after Thanksgiving, they're clearing it all off the shelves because they're making room for the next wave of foods for the next holidays coming up. So, we are certainly working with all of our food donors to say, okay, don't throw it away. Our trucks are on the road on Friday morning after Thanksgiving, ready to pick up. But food waste around the holidays happens in people's homes quite a bit. We all love these big bountiful feasts when we have family over for Thanksgiving or the winter holidays. And there's a lot of leftovers, and you can only eat so many turkey sandwiches. So people tend to sort of slow down with the eating of the leftovers and end up, tossing a fair amount of it. Already about half of the food waste, almost half the food waste that happens in our country happens in people's homes. So people are overbuying, over preparing, and then not using their leftovers. So we're going to publish a blog next week from a chef that we do some work with about creative uses of Thanksgiving leftovers. So yeah, you get bored of the turkey sandwiches. Here are some other fun ways that you can cook your Thanksgiving leftovers. People labeling the dates of their leftovers so that they remember to eat the ones that are, a few days old before they eat the ones from last night. That's something I do in my own household, and it makes a huge difference. Or freezing something before it's too late. So just being thoughtful and, realizing that you can still have a perfectly wonderful holiday. You don't have to cook a 27-pound turkey for 5 people for it to feel like a bountiful holiday. scale down a little bit, actually think about how much you need in order to, feed the family or the friends that you're gathering with. And then if you're at the supermarket and find that you are grabbing some extras, or you earned that free turkey, or there's a buy one, get one deal on potatoes, grab those extras, grab those free items and donate them, because the places that are serving the community are always in need, especially they so rarely get offered fresh foods. And we can always help with that. So if someone wants to figure out where they can donate or how they can donate those kinds of food, we'll help. We actually have something going on right now called the Turkey Take. So we have, some companies and some schools and some individuals who have everywhere from, I think we picked up 112 turkeys from a school this morning, that students brought in. They were the free turkey that their family got from spending a certain amount at the grocery store. They brought it in, we picked it up, we drove it right to one of our partners in Newark, and it went out into the community this afternoon to a whole bunch of families. But we can also do that if you've got one turkey. Fill out the form on our website. We'll come pick it up and we'll get it somewhere. So we really want to encourage people to be thoughtful about how much they're buying and preparing at home, but also realizing that there is a way to donate that kind of fresh food into the community. Now, mind you, we can't take food from people's homes. So, every once in a while we'll get a call from someone saying, hey, I have leftovers from my Thanksgiving meal. I have it packed into a couple trays. Can you come take it? We cannot, because any prepared food needs to have been prepared in a like a commercial kitchen. But at the supermarket, if you have the ability to buy some extra food, buy it, fill out our form, we'll get it from you and we'll get it where it's needed.
I think I can definitely relate to the scaling down and sort
Yeah.
of like dating your food at home. I mean, my parents always do that. We always try to finish stuff that's left over from like a few days ago and then kind of moving
Mm-hmm.
along. But yeah, I think that's really important to sort of conserve the food, make sure that it's being used, it's not being wasted.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and my
yeah.
mom has always raised me in like this like with this idea of like not wasting food ever. Like even if I don't if I order something at a restaurant and I don't like it, like I still like have to eat it and I still should eat it. And I think that just like I don't know, it just impacts my life so like a lot because I see people like throwing away like lunch every day, like if they eat like maybe like a quarter of it and they just throw it away and it just like every time I see it, it just like hurts in a way, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, you see people, you go to a buffet at a restaurant and people are just loading food onto their plates. You're like, you're never going to eat all of that. Why are you taking so much? You're not going to eat it. It's going to end up in the trash. At that point, there's no saving it. It can't be donated. That's where a good compost solution could come in. But yeah, I think once you start paying attention to it and start being conscious about it, it it changes your way of thinking really quickly. And if you were raised that way and you've always thought that way, then you're very aware of it and you really notice it. I mean, I pay attention to it all the time now, everywhere I go. Okay, what's happening with this food and where's that food going? Even in our own office, somebody will bring something in. It's like, okay, we didn't finish this today. Is it going in the fridge? Is it going in the freezer? Or are we dividing it up and taking it home? Because we're certainly not putting it in the garbage.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think it's just like
Yeah.
something that I'm like prone to noticing at this point.
Well, I hope that more and more like people of your generation do see it as a problem. I read somewhere not long ago that the CEO of an organization called Refed, which is a great source of information about food waste, by the way, you got REFED, very worth checking out, just mind-blowing statistics. Um, but she said, if you saw somebody walking down the street and they threw half a sandwich on the ground, your reaction would probably be anger and disgust because they littered. if they threw that half a sandwich in the garbage, you wouldn't think twice because littering is a crime and a social problem, but food waste isn't.
In
But it
people's
is.
eyes. Yeah.
In people's right, in people's eyes, but it is, and we need to make it so. We need to raise that kind of awareness of just how much food is getting wasted, what a serious problem that is from so many perspectives, environmental as well as from addressing food insecurity, and then start to redirect it.
I think that concludes it. I think, Sia, do you have any more questions?
I don't have any more questions personally. Do you have any questions for us by any
Yeah.
chance?
I'm excited to hear how you guys are thinking about these things and addressing these things. I guess, my question to you is, do you think we can do some things at your school together? Do you think some of your friends would be interested in getting involved? And, maybe we start doing some food rescues at the school. Maybe we sort of form a club, right? I mean,
Yeah, definitely. I mean,
Like we
our
have a food insecurity club, so we could definitely
yeah,
work through that.
great,
we
great. Because I,
have a
I
lot
think
of dedicated, educated members who would love to help, definitely. So I think that
that's
would be really
awesome.
cool.
That's awesome. It'd be really fun to figure out what that would look like and how to get the club involved and, starting at that school level, how do we put an end to the food waste that's happening in the school or reduce it, certainly, get that to feed folks right in the community. And then what's next, right? Then we can keep it going, but it's such a great place to start.
Hmm.
Thank you so much
Thank you
for
so
your
much for
time.
this. Was amazing.
Thank
This
you.
was
It was my
we
pleasure.
really enjoyed this opportunity, and yeah, I think that concludes our episode. So thank you for listening to episode 3 of season 1. And until next time, this is the Unfiltered World podcast.